Welcome back to another episode of From the Vault, Rikki Roxx Retro Action Figure Review. Today we're going to be taking a look at some Superman-related action figures, which is really exciting to me. Anybody who knows anything about me at all knows that I am maybe the biggest Superman fan on the planet. Maybe somebody else wants to claim it, but I'll fight you for it. And as such, I've really been wanting to cover more Superman material on the channel. It's just there's so many different things out there to look at and review. It can be overwhelming, and then I get distracted, and then, you know, there's boobs out there to look at and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, I apologize that we're not really focused here on any one particular thing, and sometimes we drift. But today we are going to be talking about some Superman related figures, specifically two of the figures from the line based on the 2005, I want to say, movie Superman Returns, which I was a big fan of. I know it got kind of a tepid response, and the years since, people have kind of gone back and forth on whether they think it's any good or not. I definitely agree with some that it's a little bit talky for a superhero movie, but I liked it. I still like it a lot. I think it's great. But one of the things that I didn't jump on very heavily at the time when the movie was out was the action figure line. To me, I found the line a little bit boring because predominantly, except for two or three figures, they were all just variants of Superman, and, you know, it just sort of seemed a little redundant. A lot of them had some interesting action features and accessories and things like that, which gave them some variety, but for the most part, if there were 10 figures in a wave, 9 of them were Superman, and sometimes those action features would kind of detract from the sculpt or the posability, so I just kind of stayed away. But recently I did come across a few for not too much money, so I jumped on them. These were some internet pickups, and specifically today we're going to be looking at two and a bonus, but primarily we're going to be focusing on Kryptonite Smash Superman from the basic line, Mattel Superman Returns, and we're going to be looking at Kryptonite Armor Lex Luthor from the same line. Now, these are the only two figures in the basic assortment that I have so far. As I said, I just wasn't a huge fan of this line at the time it was fresh. I do think some figures are better than others, but on the whole, there was a lot of redundancy and not a lot of different characters to collect, so at the time it was kind of not my focus. But they are pretty cool. I'm glad to finally have these two at least. So we're going to take a look at these today, and we're going to flip it over, and on the back you can see some of the variants. There were actually two Lex Luthors in this line. Both have their ups and downs, and there were many Superman figures. This was only a couple. There were multiple lines. There were some sub-series. There was actually a line, shows up here. There was actually a sub-line from Superman Returns that was, ironically enough, called the Man of Steel line, which was interesting. That movie wouldn't come out for about another 6 years, but it just kind of shows you how certain things all come back around in their own way, in their own time. But so these were from the basic series. There was also a line called Ultra, which were a little bit bigger and had different action features. So today we're going to be looking at Kryptonite Smash Superman, which I consider the best basic Superman figure in the line, and Kryptonite Armor Lex Luthor. So we're going to pop these guys out of the package and see what they're all about. Alright, so first we're going to be taking a look at Kryptonite Armor Lex Luthor. Now, right away, as far as movie accuracy, it is a big fat 0, because none of this stuff ever happened in the movie, obviously. If I was a kid, though, playing with these toys, I definitely would not care one bit. You got to take some creative liberties sometimes when you're selling action figures to children, and I understand that. I understood it then, I understand it now. It's definitely a good way to go with it, or at least it's creative. Obviously, this is not the iconic battle armor that Luthor would wear in the comic books, but it is very obviously inspired by it. It looks like the effect they were going for would be to have the entire armor set be sculpted from Kryptonite itself. At least that's the impression I get from how translucent it is and all that stuff. You know, it's a way to go with it. You got, obviously, the upper body armor. You have the boots. You have this weird-looking, giant, shiv-like Kryptonite gauntlet. It looks like just like jammed his arm into a stalactite or something made of Kryptonite. And then you have this wrist-mounted rocket launcher, which does fire when it wants to. Yeah, now it's not doing it. Did it before. Son of a bitch. I'll make it work. But anyway, so that was giving me a problem before too. The other problem is the armor pieces are barely on there. Now they do come off, which is cool. I always like when armor and stuff like that is removable. However, they're very loose to the point where when you're handling the figure, they want to fall off. Taking them out of the package, everything was falling off of them. And the boots, they just clip on and off. They're more like spats than anything. And the upper body piece especially, pretty much a stiff breeze will knock it off. Underneath though, underneath all the gimmickry, you have a pretty decent, basic Lex Luthor figure. To the point where, you know, it's a little more posable and less cluttered when you take all that stuff off of them. When I was a kid, I probably would have taken all the stuff off immediately and put it in a drawer and just had Lex as a basic figure like this. Because it's not too bad for what it is. For a kid's toy, you know, he's got gloves on, which I'm pretty sure, you know, at some point in the movie he took them off. Interesting having his pants tucked into his boots like Ghostbuster. It's pretty neat. I mean, this Lex had an interesting sense of style, gotta admit. Facial sculpt, not a bad likeness of Kevin Spacey, considering that this is, after all, a toy aimed at children. Usually toy lines will skimp in the likeness department, but here, it's pretty recognizable who it's supposed to be. Points for that. Altogether, you know, I appreciate the armor gimmick and all that stuff, but I kind of like the Lex figure without it. I definitely would prefer to pose him without it, because a lot of that stuff's just going to fall off anyway, even if just the wind hits it or something like that. But yeah, pretty cool, and you got some limited but decent articulation for the time. Elbows bend, shoulders up and down, 360-degree rotation, no outward or side to side. You wouldn't expect that really in a figure like this. Head moves side to side, no articulation at the waist. Legs go forward but not backward because of the pants. They can't bend backwards. Knees do bend, so that's pretty cool. You know, very basic, but for a figure of this scale aimed at kids, it was about as good as you could expect at the time. So I really can't complain too much about that. And again, if you do want to put the armor pieces on, they pop right back on without any trouble. So he's ready for any kind of action, no matter how you want to use or display the figure. So again, takes seconds to get him in or out of his battle armor, and then you're good to go. Like I said though, you're going to want to kind of keep an eye on it, because they don't fit very snug at all, and they come off really, really easily. I can see these parts breaking if you don't store them properly. I could see this, even if a kid was playing with this, it would probably just start to come off real easy. I don't know. It's not bad, but it definitely feels like it could have been done a little bit better. As I mentioned, I got this rocket launcher thing to shoot before, but it's being finicky now. So you got to kind of hold the button down. You can already see there's a spring in there because the plastic is see-through. So it's your basic spring-loaded mounted weapon. You got to hold the button down, put the projectile in there, then it locks into place, and then it fires. So I guess I just didn't have it in deep enough, is all. So hold the button, put it in, and But again, I could see kids breaking this or losing part of it. I was usually pretty good with that as a kid, but not everybody's like me. So again, easy on, easy off. Not a bad Lex Luthor figure. As I said, if they shipped it without all the gimmicks, it would be a pretty boring figure for kids to play with. So I understand the creative liberties involved in giving them all this extra stuff. And it's pretty cool, though. It gets the job done and it gets the point across. I mean, I'm actually glad they didn't do this in the movie because it would have been pretty cheesy, but I mean, some people probably would have liked it better. I don't know. Some people thought the movie could have used a little more action. Definitely would have been interesting to see Lex stick a bunch of kryptonite weapons all over himself and fist fight Superman, but I didn't need that and I didn't miss it. But there it is, Kryptonite Armor, Lex Luthor. Definitely the standout version of Lex for this line, and all in all, pretty happy with it. Before I forget, I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the packaging again and the style of it. I really like the big portrait of Brandon Routh as Superman. Really cool. I also like how a lot of these figure lines will get creative in how they incorporate the shape of the insignia into the packaging itself. We've seen this with a few different Superman lines, and I think this is pretty creative as well. So yeah, these definitely stood out on the shelf back then when you were going to the Toys R Us, back when that existed, and you'd see these guys. They definitely popped. Definitely really cool looking packaging for these figures. And there he is, the Man of Steel himself, the one and only Superman, as portrayed by Brandon Routh in the motion picture Superman Returns. Just like the other figures in this line, he stands a hair over 5 inches tall, and he's very, very, very movie accurate down to the last detail. The face, as you can see, is not a bad likeness at all. It does look like a Brandon Routh. It's not perfect. From the side, you can see that it's a little bit pushed in. His face sticks out more. But if you had several different Superman figures lined up side by side, you could definitely tell that this is supposed to be Brandon Routh from Superman Returns. The costume, as you can tell, is movie accurate, right down to the cloth goods cape, which is a nice touch. The colors are accurate, which is a problem a lot of people had with that movie. The red is more of a burgundy, and that's not a huge problem with me, but some people didn't like it. But the cape is pretty cool. It feels nice to the touch. Articulation, limited but good for the time. You have a surprising amount of articulation in the head, because not only does it go side to side, but also up and down. You have a lot of articulation in the head. I am very impressed with that. You could move his head pretty much anywhere you want to go. A little bit less articulation in the arms. They go full 360 on a swivel, but no side to side. You do have single jointed elbows. Nothing in the wrists. The elbows do bend. Nothing at the waist. Legs go forward but not back because of the way they're sculpted, so you just got to deal with that. And the knees do have a lot of bend for a single jointed knee, so that's pretty cool. All the joints are pretty snug and feel really good. Nothing loose on this figure at all, and definitely feels like it would hold up to a lot of playing and posing. I wouldn't have a problem giving this to a kid to play with. I think it would hold up just fine. And I think it would look great on a shelf too with my other Superman figures. Movies are an area where up until more recently there were not a lot of really good Superman movie figures, and thankfully this is, I think, one of the better ones. It's a great basic Superman. As I said, a lot of the other Superman figures in this movie line had weird gimmicks that kind of took away from the sculpt, took away from the posability, and I didn't like that too much. So in doing my research, I wanted to pick up the most basic Superman figure I could find, and that turned out to be this one here. So am I happy with it? Oh yeah. There's limitations given what kind of a toy it is. It is a toy and not a collectible for the adult enthusiast, no, it's just a kid's toy, but it's a really, really good one, and a really good version of Superman. I like it a lot. So why it's called Kryptonite Smash Superman is because he comes with a Kryptonite accessory and you can smash it. Doesn't get much more simple than that. It's got this interesting manhole cover base thing. Looks like part of the street that's been destroyed. And we've got a base and these clip-on pieces of kryptonite. Same plastic as the armor on the Lex figure. So they just snap together, and I'm assuming that the point is for Superman to bust it up. So I'm going to finagle this together and try not to break it, and we'll see exactly how that looks in action. Alright, so here we have the fully assembled and rather phallic-looking Kryptonite stalagmite. And it goes together like a funky little puzzle. You gotta look at it for a second, but then it snaps together pretty easily, albeit loosely. And I have to correct a misspeak from earlier. So Superman does have some articulation at the waist, but only in one direction. It doesn't move to the one side. That's why I thought it didn't move. But you have to simply turn him to the right. He does have a little peg on his back to help you with that. Thankfully, it's hidden by the cape, so it doesn't really detract from the sculpt. But so basically, the point of this gimmick is, and it's going to go everywhere, so can't shit be helped about that. So you just sort of give him a twist, and boom, there it is. How fantastic is that? But hey, could a kid have hours of fun picking this thing up and putting it back together and breaking it apart again? Yeah, I could see 5-year-old me having a blast with that. Simple as it is. And what's cool about it too is that the way this thing is built, the way these pieces are, and the way they snap together, the specific way they snap together, I don't think this would break. I think that you could smash this thing 100 times and it wouldn't be any worse for wear. The other pieces were over there, I'll get them later. The one thing I will say is that once you get the kryptonite base into the manhole cover base with the pegs there, that's in there pretty good. I don't want to force that to try to take it out. I think that's in there forever now. I don't care about it enough to try to take it out. I don't want to break it for that purpose. I will say the rest of it is, it's kind of a soft plastic. It's very malleable. So that's interesting. I guess to make it cheaper to produce. But yeah, once this part's in, you're pretty much stuck. But the other pieces are put together in a way so that you could play with this a lot, or your kid could play with it a lot, and it won't get too damaged. I will say, it doesn't make sense to me why this Superman doesn't have a fist, considering the entire point of the gimmick is the spring-loaded punch. And that spring does feel tight. This thing, definitely, you could hear it even. The noise when you let it go. But yeah, why doesn't he have a fist? Pretty weird, right? See, I think of these things. They ought to be paying me, but it is what it is. So that's the Kryptonite Smash portion of the Kryptonite Smash Superman figure. All in all, really good Superman. Like it a lot. Glad I went with this one over any of the options. But we do have one more thing we're going to look at today before we're done. A little bonus I'm going to throw in there for you guys. We'll be right back. Alright, so earlier I mentioned that I didn't really jump on the Superman Returns line when it was new, but that was sort of a half-truth because there was one figure that I did pick up back then. That was this guy right here. This is Heat Vision Superman from the Ultra line, a side series of figures from the Superman Returns movie that were larger at just about 7 inches tall compared to the 5-point-something of the basic series, and it definitely had more sophisticated action gimmicks and a lot more articulation. So this guy I picked up at the time because as far as what my tastes are in action figures, I just like a basic figure without a lot of gimmicks. This was right up my alley. I like the size, I like the articulation, and the selling point of the gimmick, you're going to have to be ready for this. Basically, you hit his chest, and he shoots out heat vision lasers at his eyes. Now, I bought this figure in 2005. I never changed the battery. Do it again for you. That is bright. Like, that is strong. This figure sat in a box for 10 years before I dug him out, and it's barely been used, which is probably why it holds up so well even now, but I've never changed the battery. I've barely ever even hit the button, but man, that is not a flicker. That is a strong, strong light coming out his eyes there. Now, the flip side being that the eyes themselves have no detail, because his eyes are basically lights. But, you know, when it's on the shelf mixed up with all your other Superman figures, you really don't notice it. It doesn't really hurt the likeness that much. So I didn't mind it then, I don't mind it now. Just like before, the face sculpt is a little pushed in, which I don't care for. But for the most part, you can tell that's supposed to be Brandon Routh. You know, I would have definitely worked on that a little bit so it's not so smashed inward, but it is what it is. Articulation, you really don't have any because, I mean, it moves a little bit, but that's it. But because of the clockwork in the head, they really couldn't do much with that. But arms go out side to side. They're really snug, too. They're really, really tight. Elbows bend. Very cool. Wrists swivel. Very cool. You have some articulation at the waist there. He swivels all the way around, which the other figure can't do. It only goes halfway around. This one, the legs go backwards as well as forward, and they don't really move in and out, so you can't fix that kind of funky bow-legged stance he's got, but it's not too bad, you know. And the knees bend pretty deep for a single joint, and he's also got hinges on the ankles. So a lot more articulation with this figure compared to the other one. That's why these were Ultra. There was a few other figures in the Ultra series for Superman Returns, but this was the one I picked up because it just looked the most basic and simple. I'm a simple guy. I don't need a lot of gimmicks. I just want something that's a really clean representation of what it's supposed to be, and that's why I picked this figure up and ignored all the other ones back in 2005. So I'm actually really impressed with how the heat vision gimmick still works. I mean, that's fantastic. Alright, there we have it. All three figures that we looked at today. Kryptonite Armor, Lex Luthor, Kryptonite Smash, Superman, and Heat Vision Superman from the Ultra series. All three of these figures are really, really cool, and I definitely recommend picking them up if you don't have any figures to represent Superman Returns, or if you just like Superman toys in general. I think as far as kids' toys go, these are some of the best that Mattel was able to put out. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of From the Vault, Rikki Roxx Retro Action Figure Review. We have more Superman content to come on the channel. That much I can promise you. There's figures that go all the way back to the 80s that I haven't talked about yet, and all the way up through today. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode, and I appreciate you sticking with me. Be sure to do the like, share, subscribe, all of that nonsense, you know, or not. I know you're busy, but hopefully you'll be sticking around because we got a lot more to talk about. We're going to be coming at you for a long, long time to come. Till next time, this is Rikki Roxx, and we're coming at you from the vault. We'll see you next time.